This is the VOA Special English Technology Report. Kane's Arcade is one of the latest videos to go viral on the internet. Since early April, the video has been viewed millions of times on Vimeo and YouTube. It tells the story of 9-year-old Kane Monroy in Los Angeles. He used cardboard boxes, scissors, tape, and other materials to build a game center in his father's used car parts store. Filmmaker Nervin Malik was the first to pay to play Kane's games. He is also responsible for the Kane's Arcade video. In the video, he explains how he met Kane. The filmmaker had to get a door handle for his 1996 Toyota Corolla. So he pulled into this used auto parts store and came across this elaborate cardboard arcade. He asked Kane how much it cost to play. He's like, for $1, you get 4 turns, but for $2, you get a fun pass. He asked Kane how many turns you get with a fun pass. He goes, 500 turns for a fun pass. So Mr. Malik got a fun pass and the idea for the video. Kane's Arcade has basketball and soccer, game tokens and tickets, and colorful bags of cotton candy. It even has one of those machines where you try to pick up a prize with a mechanical claw. Like at most arcades, the claw game is hard to win. But at $2 for a fun pass worth 500 plays, it's well worth the effort. Nervin Malik says his visit to Kane's Cardboard Arcade gave him much more than he expected. He told us, "I felt like a little kid again, and it was like he'd given me this tremendous, unexpected gift." In return, Mr. Malik gave Kane an unexpected gift too. He created a flash mob through Facebook. He set up a date and time and invited people to come and help him fill Kane's Arcade with customers. The event was also published on the Hidden LA and Reddit websites. The news spread quickly. Kane had 500 Facebook fans by the time the flash mob took place. More than 100 adults and children visited Kane's Arcade that day. Kane called it the best day of his life. Since then, he and his arcade have become famous, and so has Mr. Malik. In his words, "There's a reason I was driving a '96 Corolla, and it's looking like I might be able to get to make movies that I've been trying to make for a long time." Mr. Malik created a scholarship fund for Kane, and to help other creative kids, the Gold Hirsch Foundation has agreed to match every donation up to $250,000. For VOA Special English, I'm Carolyn Prasuti.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Technology Report. California Governor Jerry Brown wants to increase partnerships between his state and China. The governor traveled to China recently to seek Chinese investment in things like high-speed railways, renewable energy, and electric vehicles. He spoke at China's Tsinghua University. The governor called for a partnership between the United States and China to develop technologies to reduce greenhouse gases. Governor Brown met with Prime Minister Li Keqiang and China's Minister of Environmental Protection, Zhou Shengxian. Mr. Brown and Mr. Zhou signed a non-binding agreement to share information about policies to reduce pollution. Pollution is a leading concern in Beijing, where officials advise people to stay indoors when air pollution levels are at their highest. California's biggest city, Los Angeles, has successfully reduced the problem with smog that the city had for years. Its efforts included improving its vehicle emission standards. The state also offers special incentives or rewards for clean energy policies. Last year, California held its first sale of carbon credits under the state's greenhouse gas reduction law. The law requires big polluting industries to buy credits to release carbon dioxide, methane, and related gases. Governor Brown also hopes to create 20,000 megawatts of renewable electricity by 2020. California-based environmental scientists and representatives from environmental consulting firms also attended Governor Brown's speech in Beijing. They say rising air pollution levels in China make it a good market for technologies that help to reduce the problem. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal. I'm Alex Villarreal with the VOA Special English Development Report. Sunday, October 10th, was World Mental Health Day. This year's observance centered on the relationship between mental health and chronic physical conditions like diabetes and cancer. The World Health Organization says more than 450 million people suffer from poor mental health. The most common disorders are depression and schizophrenia. Mental health experts also include other disorders like drug and alcohol abuse that affect millions of people. Elena Berger is with the World Federation for Mental Health. That organization, based in the United States, held the first World Mental Health Day in 1992. Mrs. Berger says mental health problems are most severe in poor countries that lack the resources to deal with them. She says in developing countries, a huge number of people, up to 85%, cannot get any form of mental health treatment. Experts say about half of all mental health problems first appear before the age of 15. The countries with the highest percentages of young people are in the developing world. That means they are also the countries with the poorest levels of mental health resources. The WHO says many low and middle-income countries have only one child psychiatrist for every 1 to 4 million people. Worldwide, depression is the leading mental health problem and a leading cause of disability. In 2002, the World Health Organization estimated that more than 154 million people suffered from depression. But Elena Berger, from the Mental Health Federation, says other kinds of diseases often get more attention. She says people pay more attention to communicable diseases and not enough attention to mental health conditions. She says these are real disabilities where people are not able to work to their full ability and cannot earn an income. So there is a strong effect on families as well. Mrs. Berger says her organization and the WHO are pushing to have governments include mental health care in their development goals. She says this could greatly improve the availability of treatment and services worldwide. She says people with mental disabilities would be recognized as groups that need special support and not be excluded and ignored. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal.
Learning English, this is the Technology Report in Special English. China recently said it considered launching a drone strike against a Burmese drug trafficker. Na Cam was wanted in the killings of 13 Chinese sailors on the Mekong River in 2011. China's top drug official said the plan was to bomb the drug dealer's mountain hiding place in northeastern Burma using unmanned aircraft. The official said the drone strike idea was passed over in order to capture Na Cam alive. He was seized last April in a joint operation with Laos. That China considered using a drone strike is a sign of its increasing development of unmanned flight technology. It also suggests that China is seriously considering using drone attacks outside of its borders. Peter Dutton is with the United States Naval War College. He says China is moving away from its earlier policy of non-interference in international affairs. He says the country is becoming more active in protecting its interests beyond its borders. The United States has led the world in drone technology for years. It is known to use UAV, or unmanned aerial vehicle strikes, against foreign targets. In recent years, China has greatly improved its UAV technology. It showed off many of its new models at a recent air show in the country. One of the drones has a range of over 3,200 kilometers. China is also modernizing its global navigation system to compete with those of the United States, Russia, and Europe. The United States exports unmanned aircraft to only a few of its closest allies. China is now seen as an increasingly reliable, lower-cost supplier. Several countries have bought or built their own UAVs, mostly for surveillance purposes. For VOA Learning English,
From
I'm Laurel
VOA
Bowman.
Learning English, this is the Technology Report in Special English. China has new rules that require people to use their real names when registering for internet services. The rules also require internet companies operating in China to remove material said to be objectionable. Chinese lawmakers approved the measures on December 28th at the end of a 5-day meeting of the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress. The new rules say network service providers must strengthen management of information released by users. The providers have been ordered to stop the spread of banned information and to deal with the problem. The Xinhua news agency says those steps include removing the information from the internet and reporting it to the government. Chinese officials say the rules are aimed at protecting the personal information and stopping abuses like junk email. But critics say real name registration will discourage individuals from reporting corruption and official abuses because they are afraid of possible action against them. The new internet regulations go into effect as the Chinese government campaigns against virtual private networks, or VPNs. Some reports say the government is increasing its effort to block VPNs. Duncan Clark is an advisor to Stanford University's Graduate School of Business. He says there is often an increase in internet censorship during sensitive events, like the recent 18th Communist Party Congress, which named China's new leaders. He says these periods are normally followed by reduced enforcement. But this time, he says, it is unclear if that will be the case with the new leadership. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn Prasuti.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Technology Report. The Internet is one of the most popular forms of technology. But can using the Internet have the same effect as taking a drug? The answer seems to be yes in at least one country. China says many teenagers have grown dependent on the Internet. China calls them Internet addicts. In fact, China says that Internet addiction is the biggest threat to its teenagers. Some critics even call the Internet electronic heroin. In 2008, China became one of the first countries to declare Internet addiction an official medical condition. Experts released a report that defined the condition or disorder. It said people with Internet addiction disorder spend more than 6 hours online doing something other than work or study. Based on the definition, China has over 20 million Internet addicts. The condition has led to the creation of over 250 camps within China. They are designed to treat young addicts. The camps treat the country's young addicts for their dependence on the Internet and video gaming. Teenagers can spend 3 to 4 months at a camp. Once there, the patients are required to do demanding physical exercises and take medication. Some patients reportedly are placed in rooms by themselves for up to 10 days. Shosh Shlam and Hilla Medalia are filmmakers from Israel. They released a documentary called Web Junkie. It tells about the Internet addiction camps. Their film was produced at the Daxing Treatment Center in Beijing. China is not the only country dealing with Internet addiction. South Korea has opened over 100 treatment centers for teenagers. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal. I'm Alex Villarreal with the VOA Special English Technology Report. A new Internet training center in Togo will give young people in that part of West Africa a chance to improve their job skills. The International Telecommunication Union and the computer networking company Cisco Systems launched the center. A telecom company in Lomé is also taking part in the effort. Robert Shaw of the ITU says students will learn the basics of what he calls the real plumbing of the Internet. In January, 5 instructors completed 2 weeks of intensive training known as the Cisco Certified Networking Academy. They also learned how to train others. Robert Shaw says this kind of train-the-trainer program helps meet a growing demand for professionals in information and communication technologies, or ICT. He said, "The Internet and these networks are growing so fast, it's really hard to keep up. And the rate of change means it's very difficult for the classical educational programs to keep up with the demand that's out there in the marketplace." Mr. Shaw says recent years have seen an even stronger demand for these kinds of programs in the developing world. He said now there are about 2 billion users on the Internet. The majority of those, about 1.2 billion, are in developing countries. That is almost the complete opposite of what the situation was 5 years ago. The ITU launched its Internet Training Center program in 2001. The centers are meant to help spread the growth of ICT jobs to developing countries. More than 80 centers have opened in the Asia-Pacific area, Latin America, Eastern Europe, and Africa. Mr. Shaw says the new center in Lomé will open to students in March. He said one goal of the program is to get more women and girls to take part. So the program targets at least 30% female enrollment. Other locations in Africa include Angola, Cape Verde, Kenya, Malawi, and Mali. They also include Rwanda, Senegal, Tanzania, Mauritania, Uganda, and Zimbabwe. Students pay for the training. The cost is different in each country. Those who complete the program are known as Cisco Certified. The program lasts about 6 months because most students attend part-time. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal. You can comment on this story at voaspecialenglish.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter at VOA Learning English.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Technology Report. Workers at the damaged Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant in Japan will soon begin another cleanup effort. More than 1,500 nuclear fuel rods are to be removed from a damaged storage pool 30 meters above ground inside the Reactor 4 building. TEPCO, the Tokyo Electric Power Company, owns the nuclear power station. Critics say TEPCO should not be trusted to carry out the operation. However, TEPCO General Manager Masayuki Ono says the operation has been carefully planned. TEPCO had to rebuild the Reactor 4 building after a hydrogen explosion destroyed it. TEPCO workers will first remove pieces of wreckage left by the explosion. Then workers will remove the fuel rods one by one. They will use a crane suspended above the building. The fuel rods must not touch each other or break. Nuclear experts warn that any accidents could cause an explosion many times worse than the one in March 2011. Mitsue Murata is Japan's former ambassador to Switzerland and an anti-nuclear activist. He notes that problems over the past 30 months, including radioactive water leaks, have raised questions about TEPCO's efforts. He says if the worst happens and workers have to withdraw, then it could be considered what he calls the beginning of the ultimate catastrophe of the world. Japan's Agency for Natural Resources and Energy says TEPCO alone is responsible for safety. But to support TEPCO, the agency has sought advice from specialists around the world. Nuclear inspectors have approved TEPCO's plan to remove the fuel from Reactor 4. The process is expected to begin in November and be finished in 18 months. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn Presutti.